Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over an updated forecast on those severe storms in the eastern United States. We already have a slight risk in parts of the northeast for today, and then we're also going to be giving you an update on Tropical Storm Claudette, which reformed over eastern North Carolina, and that'll be moving out into the Atlantic. It shouldn't have too many impacts, but we will still be covering it and giving you updates on what you should expect with that storm. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. As you can see, we're getting rid of some of those excessive heat warnings and heat advisories through the southwest. Pretty much we just have some red flag warnings in effect still in parts of the southwest. We have heat advisories scattered throughout the west, as well as a few excessive heat warnings in that dark purple shade, but it's a lot more isolated than what we were dealing with just a couple days ago. And then in southern Texas, we have a few more heat advisories and excessive heat warnings. We have flood watches in northern Georgia and northern Alabama, as well as more heat advisories right along and around Philadelphia, and then also around Albany, New York. Those are the two areas where we have some of those heat advisories in effect for today. And then also we have some tropical storm warnings in effect off the coast of the eastern United States, and that's from Tropical Storm Claudette. Yesterday we had a high temperature of 124 degrees in Death Valley, California, and a low temperature 14 miles west-southwest of McKay, Idaho, where they got down to 31 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest rainfall report was near Holt, Alabama, where they got 10.95 inches of rainfall, and there were no snowfall reports yesterday. So here's what the Tropical Storm Claudette currently looks like. You can see it's sitting right on the border of Virginia and North Carolina. It's located at 36.4 degrees north by 76.3 degrees west. Maximum winds are 35 knots, which is equivalent to 40 miles per hour. Minimum pressure of 1,007 millibars, in a radius of circulation around 120 nautical miles. And most of the tropical storm force winds are to the south and east of the system. So it's a fairly small area south and east of the system that's actually dealing with the tropical storm force winds. If you're anywhere to the north or to the west of this of the low pressure center, you're probably not dealing with a whole lot in terms of any real rainfall or strong winds. Currently, it's located about 36 miles west-southwest of Virginia Beach, Virginia, and it's about 137 miles north-northeast of Raleigh, North Carolina. So that's just to give you an idea of generally where this is located. And this is going to be making its way further to the east, and it's going to be moving offshore far enough to the south where it's not going to impact really anywhere along the mid-Atlantic and northeast coast. You might have a few rip current issues for tomorrow, but other than that, once this fully moves out, we're not going to have any real issues. Most of the rain will stay offshore, and most of the strong winds will also stay offshore. So taking a look at the current satellite, you can see it is a fairly decently developed system. We have the low pressure center, which is somewhere right in here, and then we have the bulk of the action to the southeast of that center right in here. So you can see how it is kind of located a little bit further to the east than where the actual low pressure is. That's where most of the storminess is. So you can see that even though the low pressure is in eastern North Carolina, you go maybe 10, 20, 50 miles to the west of there, and you're really not dealing with a whole lot in terms of any rainfall or wind. You can see that it's actually clear skies in much of Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So really not a lot to deal with in terms of this tropical storm. And then all that cloudiness you see to the west is all from that frontal system that'll be giving us the severe weather later today. So again, this is not going to be a huge impact to land, and it's definitely not going to cause too many threats on land here. And then if we look at the key messages from the National Hurricane Center, you can see that they're expecting heavy rain from Claudette, which will continue over the North Carolina coast this morning. Isolated flash urban and small stream flooding impacts are possible. And then their second bulletin point, they're saying that tropical storm conditions are expected along portions of the North Carolina coast through this morning, where a tropical storm warning is in effect. So again, it's only going to be areas that are east of the center that are actually going to be dealing with the big issues in terms of wind and rain. And again, once you get just a bit west or a bit north of the system, you're really not dealing with much in the way of impacts. If you look at the chances that you'll see tropical storm force winds, now this was updated around 2 in the morning today. So they did not issue their updated forecast just yet. I believe they're going to put one out probably around 2 p.m. Eastern time today. So that was when the center of the storm was all the way back here. Right now, the center is all the way up here. So you're expecting that now the only areas that would be seeing any tropical storm force winds are anywhere that's east of that black line that I drew here. So if you're in eastern North Carolina and you're looking at this map and you're saying, wow, there's a 90% chance that I see tropical storm force winds, luckily and most likely, most of that has already passed by. And now that that system is almost offshore, most of the impacts will also stay offshore. So only for a little part of easternmost North Carolina can we still deal with tropical storm force winds. The rest of the state looks fine in terms of the winds. Moving on to the severe weather, you can see that we have a slight risk in effect for today, which covers much of the Northeast, especially as you get away from the coast. So you have anywhere from Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia all the way up into interior Maine and northern New Hampshire with that slight risk for today. If you look at the simulated radar, you can see that we are going to be expecting a few storms to pop up. So this would be right around 11 o'clock in the morning, Eastern time, 10 in the morning, Central time today. So this is right around when I'm recording this video. And you can see that we have some of these storms starting to pop up in the Ohio Valley. We can see Tropical Storm Claudette, which is down here. And you have a little bit more isolated rain in parts of Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. But other than that, nothing that's going to be too major. You do start to see a little bit of development as we get into the early afternoon hours, so around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Today, you're seeing some of these storms in Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, another batch of storms into western New York, western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, and even into parts of West Virginia as well. And then moving this on, here would be by 4 p.m. Central Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can see that we have, especially in parts of the Tennessee Valley, some of that severe weather, but it's also ramping up in the Northeast, especially for areas like upstate New York and Pennsylvania, where you have some of those more robust thunderstorms. And believe it or not, the bulk of the severe weather is actually going to be confined into northern New England and also upstate New York, rather than areas further to the south. We might actually see, looking at this and kind of reviewing the models that I did this morning, you might actually see a slight risk pop up in the Tennessee Valley today. We'll have to see about that. It's going to be kind of borderline between a marginal and slight risk, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if they were to put up a slight risk within that area, and who knows, they might even put up an enhanced risk, maybe for parts of northern New England or northern upstate New York, depending on how severe these storms actually are and what actually happens on the radar. If we look at around 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, these storms are now moving into the Northeast for the most part. We still have a few storms down into the Southeast, but it's a little bit more isolated in nature. We only have a couple cells in those areas, so we're not dealing with a bunch of widespread severe weather in the Tennessee Valley. Most of that is constrained to the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, so we have a few different lines. We have one that's going from Pennsylvania into upstate New York, another one potentially in Virginia, one more in West Virginia, and then a couple more smaller lines here and there. So we have a couple individual lines of storms that are just going to continue to roll to the east. You might get hit once or twice tonight, but again, these are not going to be the biggest of storms. They're just going to be, an afternoon thunderstorm with some heavy rain, maybe a few wind gusts getting up near 40 or 50 miles per hour for a brief time, and then again, they'll pass by probably within 5 or 10 minutes. So they're going to be short-lived, weak thunderstorms, but they are definitely something that you want to pay attention to, especially if you're going to be driving around tonight, because of course, if you get stuck in a heavy downpour, that could cause some issues on the roads. Then moving on to late tonight, so around 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 in the morning, around that time, this is when we're going to start to see these storms move a little bit closer to the coast, but by that time, they will be much weaker, and it's mainly just going to be a plain rain. We're also just dealing with plain rain in parts of the Tennessee Valley and the Southeast. Not a lot in terms of thunderstorms, mainly just very weak convective activity, if not just a plain rain in these areas. And then you can see those storms kind of die out a little bit more, and then once we get into the overnight hours, most of the severe weather is kind of fizzling out. here would be the total rainfall out of this event, and this is going through Wednesday, so this is including this event and anything that would happen through Wednesday early afternoon. And you can see that we have total rainfall amounts that are expected to be between about 1 and 3 inches in through the southeast. So fairly decent rainfall amounts there. If you live in parts of upstate New York, Pennsylvania, eastern or southeastern most Ohio, northern West Virginia, these areas could be dealing with rain totals right around 1 to even 3 inches in isolated pockets, and more generally about half an inch to 2 inches. And then if we look at, for example, areas in the Ohio Valley or in the coastal northeast, mostly just dealing with maybe a tenth of an inch to as much as half an inch, or in a few spots maybe even getting up near a full inch of rainfall. But again, these are going to be weaker storms, nothing that's going to be too severe, nothing that you really have to prepare too badly for, because these are going to be mainly just your weak pop-up thunderstorms that you see in many afternoons in the summertime. So these are just going to be your plain types of thunderstorms, nothing really too major to deal with. If you look at the dew points, it's going to be really muggy out there for this afternoon. We're dealing with dew points that are going to be into the mid 70s all through the Tennessee Valley, the Southeast, the Mid-Atlantic, Ohio Valley, Northeast. So all of these areas are dealing with dew points that are going to be either in the low 70s as you get closer to the Appalachians in the higher elevations, or into the upper and mid 70s as you're getting closer to the coast or as you're getting into the Tennessee Valley. So these are really high dew points, and it's really no question that we're going to see some severe weather, especially with dew points that are going to be this high. If we look at the actual high temperatures, these are a little bit on the low side for severe weather, but they are still manageable, especially along the East Coast, where we have, if you're in many of the lower lying areas away from the high elevations, high temperatures getting up above 85. And then if you live in the higher elevations, most of your high temperatures are going to be either in the upper 70s or the low 80s. If you get back into the Great Lakes, the central and northern plains, it's going to be a nice day for today, where we have high temperatures getting up into the 70s and 60s. So it'll be a nice, cool and breezy day in those areas. So definitely a nice day there, and it's going to be a lot more muggy and humid out further to the east. So once this storm does pass by, and once this cold front passes by, we will go back into a fairly chilly pattern with some drier conditions. So it will be a much more pleasant and nicer pattern after this line of storms moves through. If we look at the Cape values, convective available potential energy, you can see that we have elevated numbers through parts of the Tennessee Valley. That's why we have that one center of storms in through parts of Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and Arkansas. And then we have our next area of elevated Cape values in through the northeast, especially as you get just a little bit interior of the coast, where we have Cape values that might even be reaching 3,000 or 4,000 in a few of these spots, which is actually rather high, especially for areas in the Ohio Valley and the northeast. So that coming together, we will probably have a couple of severe storms, and I would say the main center of these most severe storms will probably be, again, in upstate New York, maybe stretching into Pennsylvania, and then also in through parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. So it looks like it's going to be confined further to the north. If there were to be another pocket of fairly severe storms, it would be probably in western Tennessee, northern Alabama, northern Mississippi, eastern Arkansas, just based on what I'm seeing on the models as of right now. If we look at the amount of total water content in the atmosphere at any one given point, you can see that we have liquid values right around 1.5 inches to 2 inches in many of these areas, pretty much for the entire eastern half of the country. And we even have a few pockets up above 2 inches, which is rather high, and that's located right along the line of storms. So when you have precipitable water amounts that high, you could definitely get a few downpours, and you can definitely tell that the areas where we have the highest precipitable water, for example, in the Tennessee Valley or in through parts of the Northeast, those are also the areas where we're dealing with the highest levels of rainfall that is expected. So we could be dealing with some quick downpours. Flash flooding is possible in isolated locations with this event. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.